I'm with Aneira Thomas. Welcome to the studio, Aneira.
Thank you.
Listen, most people are born with an umbilical cord and it's tied to their mother, right? But you had two umbilical cords. You were tied to your mother, but you were also tied to the NHS. That was the birth of the NHS in sync with your own birth. Oh, incredible.
That's a brilliant way of putting it. And I think I was tied to my mother's umbilical cord until she died.
And you obviously, the bond with the mother, we know it's such a special bond with children. But we'll talk about that later on. But the bond with the NHS, given that, when did you start to feel that bond?
I was quite grown up. I didn't understand the significance of it. Like we say, people take it for granted. Well, we're all guilty of that, even me. And I think when I was in the grammar school, people would comment on my name, and then I'd relay the story about being named after the great Aneira Bevan. But I don't think I appreciated it until I had children myself.
Looking at the NHS, 70 years of age, you've talked to Gwenoro today about equality and so on. Looking at politics in general, okay, we've had two choices really. We've had Labour and the Conservatives. If you could put your faith and trust in any party to look after the NHS, which party would that be?
For me, it's got to be Labour, because I do feel the Conservatives have undervalued it for years and years because lack of equality and wealth.
Were you surprised at the amount of money that was found all of a sudden for the NHS?
I think the whole country was surprised. It was phenomenal amounts of money being thrown at it. Yes, it really was. And where's it come from?
And you've talked about Jeremy Corbyn and the Momentum movement. And I spoke to a friend of yours, probably Tyrone O'Sullivan, a while ago. Tyrone is very much in the same camp as you about the levelling of society, equality and socialism. People are afraid of that word. It's a dirty word. They link it to communism and left-wing radicals and people who don't want you to get on in life and have wealth and so on. Just see your view of socialism and your view of, if you like, maybe politics without politics and how we can achieve something like that.
Yeah, like I said, we were brought up, it used to be called working class. And as I grew, you could see the big variations in opportunities. And to me, it was all down to wealth, And I feel Jeremy Corbyn had it right, to be honest. And I wish he was in the government now, had a part to play. Because people would come together. But the media... it's all, in my opinion, corruption. And they were frightened of him. The big fish were frightened of him.
You think that they were in danger of having the carpet pulled if he got his way and we had this sort of levelling of society?
Yes, and it would all come to light.
And yet we've seen some form of gesture. We've seen the outcry for that. We spoke to one of our MSs and we asked him, have you been shamed into acknowledging these people? Has the government been shamed into doing and providing for these very same people, the nurses, the doctors, the cleaners, the bus drivers, the lowest paid in society? Do you think that bubble will burst now? Do you think we'll all go back to normal? We've had the clapping, we've had all that kind of thing. But at the same time, we had senior nurses phoning in and saying, in tears, I can't understand. The clapping is all well and good, but we have nothing. We've got no PPE. We're not going to get any more money. Everything's going to go back to normal. People are lining up to queue up in McDonald's to burden the health service again. Is this the kind of view that you share?
Yes, I do actually, because on Saturday, there were many rallies around the country and I attended one of them in Swansea, and to see nurses that had come off a night shift speaking so well and crying at the same time. I couldn't go on the march with them, but I watched them all walking with their placards and shouting, and it made me cry myself.
Yeah. Working class heroes they are, and yet... as you say, we may just go back to normal. We've seen a very small increase in pay rise for doctors and for dentists, but the poor lowly nurses again, and now the tax on the bonus for care workers as well. Small £500, nothing, is it?
I think it's shocking. Shameful and insulting, to be honest. And
does it upset you to the point where you get angry and where you want to shout about it and grab hold of somebody and shake them and say, what are you doing, man, here, you know?
Yes. Tonya Antonazzi spoke at the rally as well, and she was shouting, and it was a fantastic speech. And I hope when Parliament opens in September that she will say the same speech in the same manner.
Well, she's been criticised for being overly emotional when she was crying. And do you think we should have that emotion? Do you think we need more of that emotion coming into politics?
Yes, certainly when it comes to health. It's because what is more important? You know, the NHS changed history and we can never have it be dismantled and go back to how it was before. It's costing lives. It's cost lives this time. Because the word for me is listening. They're not listening to the public.
You've become a figurehead for that institution, the NHS, and you kind of speak at various meetings, rallies and so on. You've met very important people. Do you give them a very firm message when you meet them? Do you tell them, listen now, Grandel, this has to stay, right? You cannot lose this. It's too important.
Yes. I speak to the unions, and I'm hoping the unions, this isn't the end of these rallies now. They're not taking no for an answer. And I'm hoping the unions will back them up more and be at the rallies with them. They've got to listen. Otherwise, nurses, doctors don't want to go on strike. But they will have a strike on their hands, I think.
You talked about levelling and, social equality and so on. What were the kind of main indicators of that within Kevin Eithin, where you were growing up, for instance? Was there a divide? Were there people that the haves and the have-nots, and were you able to identify them?
Yes. Thinking back, we were 7 children, and a lot of my friends in school, perhaps they were an only child, perhaps 2 children, and I did see the difference, and I did feel it because I didn't have what they had. Yeah. And that stayed with me, but I think how wonderful Mum was to try and get it for us, when she'd do anything to do it. But what stays in my mind as well, that I didn't have an opportunity to go to college or university where the others did.
Yeah. What do you make of the people who sort of say and point the finger all the time, saying, look at this, these working class people, they're having children everywhere, they're on benefits, they're doing this, they're disabled, they've got mental health issues, they're claiming this, that and the other. What do you say to those people? Are these legitimate claims? Are these legitimate people? Is this as a result of the way society has developed in effect, or not developed, as some might say?
Well, I'd say not developed, because we haven't walked in these people's shoes, and circumstances can change overnight. We don't know why people got to leave home and they get into trouble or whatever. I'll give an example now. My late husband, he was a long-distance lorry driver all his working life, as part of 40 years. He had a full-blown stroke, which prevented him from walking, speaking. And we had to fight to get the benefit that he was entitled to go from, say, £300 a week down to £57 a week. And even then, we had to fight to get the benefit. And he would rather be well working, But that's only one example.
We've got levels of government, from the local rural council to the town council to the county council to the Senate, the Assembly, the Welsh Parliament to the UK government. Do you think that all of that is top heavy in your plan for sort of social levelling, equality? Do you think that we need to move to far more sort of closer organisations within the communities that we live in, really, so that you've got maybe a Carmarthenshire or West Wales, something that ensures that the money is equally distributed, because that in itself, isn't it? The distribution of wealth doesn't seem to exactly reach this part of the world, does it?
No, and do you know what? They say transparency. Well, that is vital, isn't it? But us, the public, we don't get much transparency, and statistics are so important. And as you say, then if we get the statistics, instead of knocking them, perhaps we can understand a bit more of how they are doing as much as they are with what they're given. But I do feel the Welsh Assembly we are the poor relation when it comes to handouts, because we get the handouts from the establishment, from Parliament. And yes, it needs restructuring, and like we got local health boards now. I can't talk about that because I don't know enough about how the money is distributed.
Yeah.
But yes, we need planning. When Aneira and Bevan started their National Health Service for Great Britain, there was years of opposition and planning, and that's what's missing now, is planning. And I always say about who are the decision makers who sit around the tables making the decisions. The health workers should be around the table with them.
Yeah. Tyrone O'Sullivan spoke about Jeremy Corbyn, and his hope was that he would become Prime Minister. We saw the internal politics, the internal fighting. We saw him battling for his very existence for a long, long time. You were very impressed with Jeremy Corbyn, but do you think that hope is gone now for him to come back and do anything? Do you think that this time will come again, or do we need somebody else?
No, I think he could come again, and I do feel the last election was a Brexit election, and other important issues were just pushed under the carpet. The NHS, nobody seemed to... Like I said, you take it for granted, and I think, it'll always be there.
Yeah. And the book that you've published now, it's about the story about the hardships and the NHS, and it sort of trails all the way through it. Looking at history in general, do you think our children within schools are taught enough about the history of the common man, the working classes? Do you think that enough of that is taught?
No. Because when I have given speeches, say I started 20 years ago, I used to end my speeches by saying we must listen to the youth of today, because they are our future.
Yeah.
And please God, the NHS will be there for future generations, but it won't be there unless people listen and act upon it. And where better to start than in schools? Because, perhaps the voting will come down now to 16 at one time,
We have successive Conservative governments. They had a massive majority on the last election. What do Labour have to do now in order to turn things around? Because it was a disaster. Like
I said previously, I think it was a Brexit election. I think that's all we'd heard for years on end, all the shouting, the fighting over Brexit. And that took over everybody's thinking. The character thoughts were all about Brexit.
We lost sight of the main important issues, did we?
You're right. Yeah, we really did lose sight. And we need to come together and listen to... sorry, shall I start again?
It's all right. No, you carry on.
Yeah,
come together.
We need to come together because health is our wealth. And without a struggle, there's no progress.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed your interview with Gwenora. I listened in, and I loved the music you chose as well. You're a very kind, caring, sensitive woman who's given her life to others, and the NHS, that umbilical cord is still very, very strongly attached to you. I don't think it will ever be cut. Yes. But Aneira Thomas, thank you very much for coming in and giving us such a great insight into your life, the NHS, and how important it is for us as a society.
Could I say one more thing?
Yes.
There's something it's a saying by D.H. Lawrence, and it's quite pertinent to me for the NHS, and it do not allow to slip away from you the people that came before you, one with such hard knocks. So please help us preserve the National Health Service, and thank you all.